before we kind of get into the cusp of it, I want to start with some mythbusters, if you will. I don't know if mythbusters is the right word for it, but there are some statements floating around that I hear a lot that I find rather annoying, and I wanted to address them up front. Because when they're said with confidence, people tend to believe them, and all our research and all our insight over the last few months proves the contrary. We've done a lot of extensive research into the impact of the pandemic on brands and consumer attitude to CSR and to sustainability, and finding that, contrary to popular belief, sustainable and ethical behavior is seen by majority of people as more important than ever. The first one about COVID-19 has made people care less about the environment is just not true at all. And I think this is something, again, all of these are things we need to consider as marketers and as brand guidelines and counselors, right? We see Gen Zs and millennials, for example, the Greta Thunbergs of this world. They're seeing this environmental fight almost like a generational war. They're blaming the Xers and the Boomers for destroying their planet and destroying their future. And this has been truly exacerbated by the pandemic and how this has been handled by global leaders, often of a certain age and gender. This is so much bigger than they just kind of buying consciously now. It's about regenerative actions rather than just sustainable actions. They are, for the first time, experiencing how slow in the world activity is supporting the planet, and witnessing for the first time how reduced production and manufacturing is clearing the air and bringing back wildlife. Our research over the past few months has told us that COVID-19 has made especially this demographic move become more conscious, more aware, and a lot more critical to business and business operations. Which kind of leads me to the second point. A lot of companies are saying that, brands now need to focus on just getting back to business as usual. I have a lot of conversations and hear a lot of people saying, well, it was all good and well to focus on our footprint and our CSR initiatives, etc., when we're solvent. But now we just have to focus on getting back to business. And yes, everybody wants to return to business growth. But business growth is not returning to business as usual. Okay, and this is where the difference is. And this is where we need to be very conscious and very aware of our actions and our plans forward. Because with business growth now means business as unusual. It's not about being innovative. It's not about being innovative as it used to be. It's about innovating in a whole new way. We're seeing powerful brand innovation being focused now around sustainability. Finally, there's an idea that pandemic will have now a very negative impact on the progress of CSR in Asia. CSR has only really gained traction here properly in the last few years. And now many worry that the pandemic will have companies kind of move back to the old ways of doing business. What's interesting, though, what we're seeing is that a large number of brands, leading brands in industries that are operating in Asia, are taking this opportunity to pivot to more sustainable production, manufacturing, and distribution. I mean, this is where a lot of the world's consumption and the world's pollution happens. And companies, as well as governments, are recognizing this. So rather than slowing down the focus on CSR, we have in the last few months seen an increasing focus in ESG reportings, for example, in claims of environmentally friendly production processes. And in things like food delivery, we see packaging moving away from single-use plastic and disposables. So this is not, the time to stop thinking sustainably as a brand and as a business or as a marketer. In order to get really ahead of this curve and come out the other side winning, you need to be in a position to return to business growth with a model that address and deliver on demands of consumers today. And there are a few things I like to keep in mind, and I want you to keep in mind as you start planning brand strategy as to return to business growth and return to new normal. I'm going to dive deeper into all of these as we go along, but as kind of top line things you need to consider that I think are key to success is, one, to truly understand the purpose of your CSR and how it is currently being implemented and tracked and communicated. CSR has been so many things and it's changing so fast. And it sits across different departments. It sits in different teams. It's often ad hoc, or it's a report that comes down from global. We don't know what to do with it, how to implement it, how to localize it. What I was saying is it can be hard to really pin down what your brand purpose really is, and then how it is being implemented and managed, and then ultimately how it's being used in your branding, in your marketing, in your comms, in your stakeholder management, and so on. I mean, more often than not here, it's not really present in branding or in marketing at all. So that's kind of the first task, because we're seeing consumers here in Asia they want access to more sustainable alternatives in really almost all categories, right? Across all parts of their life: transportation, energy, food, fashion, education, finance. They're searching for these alternatives actively. One of the things that we found to be a barrier to change and barrier to people switching to other products or other providers is lack of awareness. Brands, it's not necessarily that brands aren't doing anything. It's about communicating those activities and those initiatives effectively to your consumers. So it doesn't really matter now what industry you're in. Chances are your consumers are looking for sustainable alternatives. And a lot of industries, that awareness is very low, and the app is very weak. So this really is a good time to stop and make changes and be that alternative. The best way to do that, I think, in something that's very kind of close to my heart, which we'll hear about it later on, is to act on this without too much disruption and without too much cost, and that's through partnerships. Once you know what your real purpose is, what you can promise with credibility and with relevance for your business to your consumers, you can identify the organizations and the people that can really add to your purpose and help you deliver on and communicate your programs and your impact, to make that footprint a lot more impactful, a lot more effective. It's so important because if you don't accept and address this now, chances are you will be left behind. We are seeing, who weathers this storm best, and it is sustainable brands and brands with a focus on that demand from consumers. With this shift in consumer behavior, it kind of really does reinforce the need for companies to increase their commitment to responsible business practices and embrace that more circular economy. Some of the interesting stats we uncovered during our research shows that this shift goes beyond just awareness, but also follows the entire life cycle of the product. So it means being really thinking through your strategy from end to end. Understanding that it's not something you can ignore now or postpone due to COVID. It's really going to make the difference between brands who come out winners and those who come out maybe no longer even in business. And it's not just the consumers either, because the regulations and operating environment hasn't actually changed. The business operating environment has changed. Those pressures that are driving the operating environment adds to this, right? These changes are rapid and they're almost daily, and they force companies to become more sustainable and become more and more accountable. The changes we've seen the last couple of years in things like ESG reporting becoming mandatory, they're still mandatory, right? There are very distinct changes in investor relations, where harmful industries such as fossil fuel is no longer often traded or becoming very expensive, and green portfolios kind of racing ahead. That hasn't changed. These trends are still moving forward really fast. And we have on top of this, there is announced this constant push by scientists, activists, politicians to, stop, change, reverse what we're doing to help fight the climate crisis. So this is really, it's a race on who gets there first and who acts and addresses this now. We are recognizing, though, that this constant pressure to do better, the rapidly changing environment in which we operate, and the stakeholder demand to show initiatives and plans for CSR becoming more forceful, it's often easy to lose sight of what we're doing CSR in the first place. And I think this is a very important thing to consider when you are looking at sustainability in branding and sustainability in marketing, because it often leads to initiatives that don't properly reflect the brand purpose, the business model, or the values that we really want to convey. And this is when we get accusations of greenwashing, for example. So when reputation get damaged, then brand values really start to decline, which is the opposite of the intended effect of any real CSR strategy. So it is crucial to never lose sight of the reason why we do CSR in the first place. And the reason for a CSR strategy should not be to deliver on business results. The purpose of the strategy should always be to align a company's social and environmental activities with its business purpose and values. And if this is done correctly, if we do this right, these initiatives will help mitigate risk, it will build reputation, and it will deliver on the bottom line. Now, it can be difficult and, it can be daunting, and often people leading these initiatives are either too close to the action to kind of lift their head and assess the situation with a broader view, or to understand perception and sentiments and attitudes towards your company, towards your industry, by consumers and by stakeholders. I have these discussions with clients a lot, and sometimes it does take a bit of an outside view to steer. It's one of the reasons why I so love working in this space, and why our CSR and citizenship offering called Better Impact is such a core part of our business now. It's not, traditional PR and communications. It's really focusing on CSR and sustainability in comms and in brand planning. I'm not going to talk, a lot about us, but for those who don't know us, Better Impact at H&K is a strategic consultancy platform which is designed to help brands and businesses through the sustainable transformation. Our consultants work very closely with brands, with businesses, with governments and organizations to identify, develop, and implement CSR models and initiatives that have positive impact on people and planet and on the industry. It was born really to support brands in creating CSR frameworks and strategies that not only reflect and align with the brand purpose and values, but offers opportunities for improving overall operational effectiveness, as well as optimizing a more sustainable business model. It's not really designed to simply plan and execute on linear programs, so we do that as well, but to support businesses truly through the sustainable transformation to have long-term positive effect on the business and the world in which they operate. I'm going to play a video for you now from our Better Impact, one of our Better Impact programs. It's one of my personal favorites, as it demonstrates, I think, both how historically rigid and controlled industries can pivot and transform, and how consumers, when given the option, actually really want to choose the more sustainable solution, kind of putting the greater good ahead of personal good for common benefit. So please play the video.
In 2018, the United Nations released an urgent report emphasizing the need to cut carbon emissions in half by 2030 in order to avoid an irreversible climate crisis. In 2018, the United Nations released an urgent report emphasizing the need to cut carbon emissions in half by 2030 in order to avoid an irreversible climate crisis. The average consumer in Sweden causes around 10 tons of carbon emissions each year, of which 60% is linked to consumption. Later in 2018, Doconomy, a Swedish fintech, took on the challenge and launched Do, a mobile banking service for everyday climate action. The Do app is connected to a credit card that enables users to track and measure their carbon footprint from each purchase and to compensate for its impact day by day. This spring, Doconomy took its fight against climate change one step further by adding a premium credit card to its offer. But instead of introducing a premium credit card with the typical benefits that encourages further mass consumption, Doconomy did the opposite by launching Do Black, the world's first credit card with a carbon limit. Simply put, it's the first credit card ever to stop you from overspending, not based on your available funds, but rather on the levels of CO2 emissions caused by your consumption. Do Black helps you track your climate impact and ensures that you reduce it by 50% in line with the UN 2030 recommendation.
The core purpose of Do Black is not only the ability to measure the impact of your consumption, but also bringing it to a direct halt, making it a radical tool against climate change.
For years, credit cards have put a limit on our credit. Do Black puts a limit on our impact.
And Economy Black actually won the award for CSR at the very prestigious Sabre Award just a couple of months ago, adding to a long line of awards for the innovative solution addressing the climate crisis. The idea behind this solution is, as you just saw, is a credit card designed to actively help consumers stop overspending based on environmental impact caused by the consumption. It's resulted not only in almost 50 other banks wanting to white label this solution, but in consumers really embracing this concept and showing preference to using this over normal card, which then encourages purchases and consumption. A lot of questions we've had here is around the use of personal data and breach of privacy, etc. However, we're actually seeing that consumers now are more willing to give up data if it's used for greater good. Not less concerned with privacy protection if it's for a sustainable solution rather than if it's for business profitability. Makes sense to me. Now, data and trust has always been a bit more of a sore point maybe in Asia and in some countries more than others, but we're seeing the same type of demand from consumers for businesses and governments to empower them to do better, to use their data, to use this information, to enable them to have the choice of a more sustainable lifestyle, more sustainable consumption. We're seeing certain financial institutions, actually in Singapore, already rolling out similar solutions, and I'm extremely optimistic about how all sectors really here can start to use that vast amount of data that they own here for better. I mean, given the population, the data, as well as the consumption and the spending growth year on year in this region, I really think that Asia should be, leading this transformation. So I want to talk a little bit more about the region, about Asia. I mean, so what is happening really in Asia? With the exception of a few advanced markets, Asia has traditionally been lagging behind Europe in action and in commitment to battling the climate crisis. To increase sustainable business operations, to reduce emissions, and eradicate plastic pollution. There are a lot of reasons why we're just kind of catching up now. There's a lot of reasons why we're so, lagging a bit. There are historic reasons, it's a lot of this. It's not our problem. We didn't start the Industrial Revolution, so, let them fix it. It's quite a popular one. There is a bit of a circle of denial, I find a lot here, where the government and the corporate and the public are all pointing fingers at each other. So there's a lot of lack of accountability and responsibility. And there's a business reason, which is one that we are kind of actively working to address as well, where the CSR initiatives and sustainable programs are not actually part of the business growth plan or the business model. And so it is not actually reflected in the bottom line. It's not part of profitability planning. So it becomes often a nice to have rather than a must have. Whereas in Europe, it's such a integrated part of any business model, any business plan, that it is immediately shown as having an impact on your profitability as a company. It's changing, and it's changing fast, which I think is very encouraging. Regardless of what's happening at the moment, this traction is still very forceful. But we've seen that while certain businesses are lagging behind, not in all areas, but in many, and just slowly catching up. A bit of this wanting to halt now is one of the dangers, because consumers are not stopping, they're not halting, and they're not really lagging. They're catching up fast, right? And they're loudly demanding more options and more solutions that help them live more sustainably, like we just talked about. They want alternatives, and they want to be enabled to be part of a change and to see that change happening in their world on their doorstep. They want brands and companies to bring them in, to allow them to be part of something bigger than themselves. What's really driving these changes now, that what's happening in the wider ecosystem and what it means for brands and businesses, there are a lot of different trends, a lot of different areas that are having this impact on what sustainability will look like in Asia in the future. And I've selected a few that I wanted to take you through that I think are the most relevant ones for us to consider as marketers. There are, I've got two that I want to talk to you about that are more business and consumer driven, and two that are more, I guess, macro driven. But together, these forces change both top down as well as bottom up, to kind of meet in the middle, to shape sustainability in the region, and to drive business models, business production processes, and branding. One of the main trends in business is driven by consumer demand. And this is, we call it enlightened self-interest, and it's on the rise from the fact that consumers want brands to enable sustainable behavior. If brands actively work to produce and operate sustainably and ethically, it benefits the climate, it benefits the industry, it benefits the consumer, and of course, then it benefits the business. We see this growing quite fast in markets like Singapore, with the F&B industry now kind of making radical changes to their production offerings to satisfy this new demand for customers, as well as in fashion. It's also increasingly obvious now in community and social activities becoming more prominent in business. We've seen this a lot through COVID-19 as well. That spirit of giving, which is especially kind of in religious context, has always been very ingrained in the majority of Asian cultures. There's a sense of reciprocity that's injected, and we see this come to life a lot through donations, fundraisers, sponsorships, etc. This has been a really integral and forceful part of overall CSR strategies and planning for leading brands and businesses across Asia. Which again brings me to the final point on this side, which is about different stages of maturity in CSR, which I find very interesting, is that the first typical CSR program tends to be very philanthropic in nature, which means, giving to charity, donating to an organization or program. While this is great, it doesn't require any changes internally, but can, still impact positively on performance through reputation build and brand affinity and so on. And this is where majority of Asian companies have been typically operating, where reciprocity comes in. This is changing, and we expect that change to accelerate. The more sophisticated stages of CSR comes when enlightened self-interest becomes ingrained in the business purpose. So this includes changes to manufacturing, use of recyclable and reusable materials, changing suppliers and partners to support local economies, and so on. The second one we're looking at is about aspirations and how consumer aspirations are changing and how this directly impact on consumption and then directly impacts on brands and on businesses. It is no longer as aspirational to have money to spend on traditional luxury items. Again, difference across markets, but we are moving, mindset is moving towards exclusivity and scarcity, and in production, not necessarily in monetary value. We're not there yet by any means, but that trend is really very clear in fashion, in energy, in transportation, in travel, in all these categories across the region. We're seeing shared economy growing along with the growing consumerism. I mean, we are consuming more than ever, but that shared economy is following that line, that curve. We're moving away from fast fashion and this use and discard mentality towards recycling, swapping, secondhand purchases, This is really quite obvious in the fashion industry here. And the last one, like with the economy example, consumers in APAC are positive to sharing data with businesses if it can be used for social good. There was a study done by TrendWatch, actually, where we saw 78% of people surveyed said it would gladly give companies access to the personal data if they can demonstrate how this directly impacts on the world in a positive manner, which is quite extraordinary. For the macro side of things, we have two trends that I think are shaping the future of sustainability in Asia. One is about regulations increasing. We got ESG reporting becoming mandatory for listed companies in a lot of countries now. We have ban on plastic and single-use plastic and disposable packaging. Waste management and recycling requirements are moving in quite heavily. While these are more kind of forced change, I guess, if you will, it still obviously impacts dramatically on operating procedures and provides the kind of proverbial kick up the butt to many companies needing to make the necessary changes. It can also help really powerfully shape your CSR strategy and platform more clearly to make brand purpose and then the communication around it more tangible and actionable by attaching it directly to one of these regulatory needs or the ESG needs. Another interesting macro trend, I think, that will have great impact is the increase in transparency and therefore in accountability that we see in supply chain. I mean, blockchain, first one, means transparency across all touch points, and therefore it helps to identify areas that are not running ethically or sustainably. Combine this with stakeholder and consumer access to data and information, there's really, now difficult to hide, and companies who are pretending to act sustainably whilst proving the opposite in some part of their supply chain will be called out on this. And we know that can have really devastating impact on a brand. And then finally, we're moving away, not away from, but moving more from sustainable to regenerative in the region, which is huge. Which an increasing need to kind of fend for oneself now that we're seeing after the pandemic, and the fact that so many natural resources are almost gone from overproduction, overfishing, overfarming. We are seeing companies identifying really powerful opportunities to regenerate resources and become self-sufficient, more local and more agile. Again, which is something that consumers are shouting for here. The pandemic really has shown us the value in circular. And I think this will only continue to grow, and brands with the ability to make this shift towards this model, I think will have a huge benefit in the future. Now we just talked about a lot of kind of stats and trends and some macro and some micro, but really one of the key things for me, at least, to take from this and to keep remembering when working on branding and on planning is that sustainability really is becoming the new status. And if you don't have a role to play in this kind of new and shiny space, you will really quickly fall behind. It means brands must move from, that philanthropic campaigning towards a more holistic business model with sustainability at its core. And then you become a part of the solution, not just supporters of other causes. Finally, it means you become, that enabler for better, providing real sustainable alternatives and solutions to consumers and stakeholders. You put yourself at the heart of the change for better. This comes down to your marketing and e-commerce planning as well. If you want to get consumers to adopt your sustainable solutions, to make changes for better, and for your stakeholders to invest and engage, you need to tell them about it, right? Unfortunately, because it's still often a philanthropic approach to CSR and not a business approach, the marketing departments and sales departments are not really part of this planning process for these initiatives, which is so important. Because if you want to reach, new younger demographic, you have to make your CSR programs visible, integrated, and relevant, as well as, funny, human, and a bit sexier than what we've typically been doing. So CSR needs to be, right in there. It needs to be an integrated part of your brand, and it needs to be an integrated part of your business model, which is really challenging and can be really difficult, and often kind of too much to digest or to integrate or to plan for. But then sometimes, something happens that forces that change. And the best thing to do then is to find a way to navigate through it and come out the other side stronger, which is exactly what we're talking about, and which is exactly what is happening to us now. Yes, hello COVID. You changed our lives maybe forever, and maybe for better, but everything's changed. Consumption patterns changed, lifestyle changed, work changed, social norms changed, travel changed, and global consciousness has changed. Interesting enough, in the beginning, it has also worked to enhance and strengthen attitudes towards the topics of sustainability, climate change, and CSR amongst our consumers. We conducted a study across Southeast Asia to assess whether the focus has shifted during these times and how that has impacted on it. And we found what we found was very encouraging. As we know, this is time to make those changes. We've got 84% of our respondents said they're more focused on buying products that can be recycled or reused. 92% are more likely to apply for jobs with companies who encourage employee participation in CSR initiatives, which I think is really interesting. And then 70% say they will change to brands who are actively supporting social or environmental initiatives. And then finally, which is encouraging, is that climate change still is the number one concern amongst millennials and Gen Zs in Southeast Asia as well. We know this is the demographic who will have the most purchasing power. They will have the loudest voices, not only in social, but in media and in politics, and they will make up the workforce of the future. So it's time to listen. And if you want to be a leader and you want your brand to succeed in this new normal, I say it's time to make these changes. There's no time like the present. It's actually never been a time quite like the present. COVID has, like we said, it's changed forced change in critical areas of sustainability, highlighted by positive shift in consumption, growing interest and engagement in social and environmental initiatives. It's a really strong opportunity, I think, for brands to build disruptive, targeted, and tangible CSR strategies into their growth plan, into their brand planning, to address a new normal and occupy a new white space territory for long-term sustainable competitive advantage. We see that online conversations on sustainable shopping and production increased by 325% in the first half of the year. And respondents who believe it is not too late to save the planet was up 20% from the primary survey that we conducted before COVID hit, which goes back to the point earlier about witnessing firsthand the positive impact the pandemic has had on the planet. It has resulted in change in many areas, and we've seen many businesses already addressing it and adapting to it and changing accordingly. It's happening across industries and across markets. We see brands change their model, their products, their approach in response to this. Some brands pivoted faster than others, and found purpose linked to the business model and their strategy, so they could quickly implement and own in a very credible and impactful manner this new normal. We saw Havaianas and H&M arrange for their supply chains to start producing protective equipment for healthcare professionals to be distributed to frontlines and hospitals around the world. They changed their suppliers to local production to simplify distribution and using recycled and reusable materials, moving more and more towards a more circular economy within the company. We had Diageo producing 8 million bottles of hand sanitizers, and Ball & Branch recognized the hospital beds and pillows would become scarce, so they turned production on to meet this urgent demand. These are examples of brands creating brand new verticals for the company, but also ensuring improvement in their operational effectiveness and even changing the business model. Clearly embracing a more, advanced stage of sophistication of CSR. There were initiatives that were launched here in Asia as well, and in Singapore. We had Gojek giving frontline workers vouchers to get them safely and easily. We had Lazada offering online advice from doctors on safe delivery methods of online purchases. We had Kupiko in Manila, supplying free water and coffee to health workers and frontline fighters. However, while these initiatives were great and they offered both relief and support on ground where needed, again, it's still very much in the philanthropic space. These campaigns can be good for short-term reputation build, but they're not long-lasting impact plays, and they're not helping to solve any greater issues. But now, given the current climate and knowing that many businesses do need to change and adapt to new environment, this is maybe the opportunity for brands and organizations in Asia to really leapfrog and dramatically change their operations, their model, and their offering. I think as the world stops to take a collective breath, really this is the time to reassess your model and your operations and find new ways to improve your operating effectiveness through a more sustainable business model. But time is of essence here. This is the momentum we need to ensure these forced disruptions result in lasting changes and long-term positive impact. But it must happen now, and you must act now, or it will be too late, and you will have missed out, brands will have missed out. One of my key areas of focus and where I inject kind of most of my energy and my effort is working with brands to address the urgent need to move towards a sustainable business model and holistic and impactful CSR strategy. And the solution I found, which is most effective, I think, is to facilitate the right partnerships and the right collaborations that are aligned to business purpose. To take the move towards sustainability, to make it more easy and make it more effective. So just to finish up, where we just wanted to talk to you quickly about this platform. We built a platform called Project Impact, which just does that. It's here really to help brands easily and effectively implement these changes to the operating system, to the business, and to their branding. At H&K, we are fortunate enough to work with both NGOs and corporations across the world, wanting to help build a more sustainable world, build a more sustainable planet. And we want to take this opportunity to help everyone do better, really, together. So we created this to be like a matchmaker, call it a Tinder for brands, for powerful and impactful, sustainable, collaborative initiatives. It's easily forged and effectively implemented to provide businesses with the opportunity to introduce new and improved business models quickly and with credibility. It works. It's designed to help brands effectively connect and partner with organizations and initiatives already operating in space that reflects that brand's purpose in CSR. It provides the opportunity for brands to immediately introduce change and improvements in operating effectiveness and to offset some negative footprint straight away. And it's an innovative and unique solution for brands in Asia to move from that philanthropic initiatives towards introducing business model transformation. It's dynamic, interactive, and transparent. It helps brands partner with NGOs. It's really quite simple, even if the output can be game-changing. We evaluate the brand purpose and identity, and then we identify the relevant partners and organizations that can help improve that operating environment for better. We can either identify new suppliers, provide options for sustainable behavior, collaborate for reuse or recycling, or build or support initiatives that impact on your supply chain, to name a few. I don't want to go into too much detail, and I know we're running out of time. Just to quickly recap that platform allows organizations, brands, and individuals to easily register their interest, fill out the form prompted, and then our better impact consultants create profile cards for each that are then assigned to the relevant NGOs, aligned to business purpose and industry, and then mapped against relevant areas, locations, and elements. The matchmaking kind of begins then, and then, that's where that magic happens. Ultimately, my philanthropic idea and my hope is that the platform will help create collaborations across sectors and organizations to really provide new circular economy solutions. I believe that a circular economy can only happen through collaboration across sectors and industries, and that these collaborations need to be easy, they need to be cost effective, and they need to offer real tangible impact that can be reported on and communicated to stakeholders on all levels. Super excited to be launching this now. And I think this is the time, and this is a really good jump off point for brands to move faster and more effectively towards a really impactful CSR strategy and a more sustainable business model. So we're kind of summing it up. I know that's a lot, but I don't want to iterate that kind of regardless of where you are in your CSR journey, this really is the time to stop and take stock. Whether you're just starting out and want to understand how to define your purpose and value through a CSR lens, or maybe you recognize the need to evaluate and adjust your current initiatives or programs, or you want to find new ways to bring those initiatives out to your consumers or stakeholders. This really is the time to do that. The path of sustainable transformation, as I see it, is to introduce, define your brand purpose, identify the SDG aligned to your purpose, and map out all the things that needs to be true for you to reach that goal. And then audit your existing programs, your initiative against your brand purpose and assess the current impact. Identify the core areas and models for focus to improve on that business model, and then adjust the strategy to help deliver on those revised goals in the current climate and in the new reality. And then you build your brand, you build your campaigns with that purpose at its core. So you integrated your CSR into your business and into your brand planning. And then you find that strategic partner and those collaboration opportunities to help accelerate on those plans. And then finally, bring your consumers and your suppliers with you. They need to be part of this. Give them a purpose and then watch them bring your brand to the front. So I'm just going to leave you on this short little list of some do's and don'ts, which I think are important to just, keep in mind. The first, for the do side, obviously, is, you need to integrate sustainability into your brand. If you're serious about making your brand sustainable rather than have it as a add-on, environmentally sustainable work practices need to permeate your business and your culture at every step. And then you need to educate, right? So do not fall into the trap of like trying to champion your own efforts constantly. There's only so much marketing and self-promotion that your audience can take. So instead, you need to make sure your content is educational, informative about sustainability. That causes many layers and nuances, and a clear voice reaching out to consumers really will stand out. And then make your own targets. So instead of following another business path sustainability, which is easy if you don't really know where you are or how to begin, or what thread to pull at, it's easy to just jump on someone else's wagon. But you can't. It's important that you don't do that, right? It's important that you focus on creating and meeting your development goals. You know your business, you know your company best, and hence are in the best position to map out a path that works efficiently for your brand. And then be sure to check in constantly to make sure you're meeting your goals regularly. And then pick the right partners. Again, while you might be certain that your company has sustainable environmental practices in place that are followed, you can undermine all your hard work by picking partners who are not sustainable. Which brings us to the downside. Just don't greenwash. It's just the most destructive thing you'll ever do. Do not oversell your green initiatives. Do not create a false narrative around them. Do not say make claims that you can't back up. This is how reputations are torn down, and this is how brands really are destroyed now. But don't undersell either, right? Just celebrate your sustainable practices and achievements with your customers. We know now that awareness is a massive barrier to change. So take them along on the journey, make sure they understand what you're doing, talk about it, tell them about it, introduce them to it. It's better to appear as a green advocate than as a brand that don't really care about sustainability at all. And then finally, shorten the vision. Don't shorten the vision. Don't aim for quick fixes to your reputation. Plan for long-term impact, and then communicate the steps along the way with your stakeholders. And that's all I've got for you. And I know we're out of time, so I don't think we have time for questions. But thank you all very much. I was going to say that there is my details are on the last slide, but I see that they're not. But you can get them from the organizers, or you can find me on LinkedIn. So thank you everyone for your time.